be opened. Spirit, make us soft, make us ready, Lord, to hear what you want to say. We're listening. In Jesus' name, amen.
If you've been in the study guide this week, you know that we're in Isaiah 58, verses 3 to 7. Listen to how Eugene Peterson puts it in the Message. Shout! A full-throated shout. Hold nothing back. A trumpet blast shout. Tell my people what's wrong with their lives. Face my family, Jacob, with their sins. They're busy, gathering on Sundays and love studying all about me. To all appearances, they're a nation of right-living people, law-abiding, God-honoring people. They ask me, what's the right thing to do? And love having me on their side. But they complain. Why do we fast and look the way that, and you don't even look our way? Why do we humble ourselves and you don't even notice? Well, here's why. The bottom line on your fast days is profit. You drive your employees much too hard. You fast, but at the same time you bicker and fight. You fast, but you swing a mean fist. The kind of fasting you do won't get your prayers even off the ground. Do you think this is the kind of fast day I'm after? A day to show off humility? To put on a pious long face and parade around solemnly in black? Do you call that fasting? A fast day that I, God, would like? No. This is the kind of fast day I'm after. To break the chains of injustice, to get rid of exploitation in the workplace, to free the oppressed, and to cancel debts. What I'm interested in seeing you do is sharing your food with the hungry, inviting the homeless poor into your homes, putting clothes on the shivering ill-clad. To be continued. Well, you remember last week, we heard the trumpet blast. So what if you show up on Sunday and worship well, but the rest of the week you act any way you want? But the Jews come to verse 3, and they say, well, you know, it's not just about Sunday, Saturday for them. It's not just about the day we gather for worship. No. We, all the way through the week, are engaged in practices that show you how committed we are to you. Well, Isaiah talks about fasting in this text, but he's really talking about all kinds of different practices that the Jews engaged in. For sure, there was gathering on the weekend, but there was also practices through the week. And they were using those practices, well, not in the best way possible. Practices are important. Anybody that's ever played a musical instrument, been involved in sport, or honed a craft that they do, know how important it is to practice. As I was thinking through how we could present this week, I wondered about bringing my future son-in-law to our gathering today. And so if we could put the video on the screen, that would be a great help. Let's see what Lance has to say. Going to have you do something else, and we'll circle back to that after. Okay. We're taking time to do this, and for those of you who are listening to this talk that don't know you, I mean, your general claim to fame is that you're going to be my son-in-law in a year or so from now. But other than that, hockey's been your life. Growing up in Canada and then playing in the NHL. And tell us, where are you now? What are you doing now?
So right now I'm in Dresden, Germany. I'm I'm playing in the DEL here, which is the top league in Germany, for the Dresden Eislöwen.
And you've been there. This is your first year, I think, in that league. And
Yeah.
the goal is to try to play at least another year and see where that goes. Is that kind of where you're headed?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm getting older now. Obviously, going to be getting married here soon, so it's not just me anymore that I have to worry about. So yeah, we'll see. I'd like to play another year for sure, but yeah, let's just see how it goes.
Good answer. Good answer. So even like I know last summer, I saw you firsthand doing some of this, but maybe as you even think of the summer coming up, if you're going to play again next year, what are the things that you do typically in a summer to sort of, prepare yourself for training camp or to keep fit, or, what are the practices that you engage in to make sure you're ready to go?
Yeah, typically, summer for me looks like I take a couple weeks off after the season and just let the body recover. And then pretty quick after that, I'm back in the gym. Start off with a strength phase just to build back up the muscle that you lost during the season and the time off. And then from there, you go into a power phase. And then from there, you go into a speed phase to finish. And while you're doing all that, you're on the ice skating and then working on your game and trying to improve wherever you can.
So you're in the gym how many days?
Yeah, Monday to Friday, every week throughout the summer. So it's about, my summers typically from this year, it's going to be from April until probably end of July, depending on where you sign or if you sign, or how late you sign. So that's about 4 months that you're in the gym, Monday to Friday, working out for at least 2.5 hours in the gym, and then probably an hour on the ice twice a week, 2-3 times a week, something like that.
But I saw you. I know that there's other things you're doing too. Like you're on a bike a lot. How much biking are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I try to, that's a big part of it too, is getting the cardio in. So I enjoy it too. So it's nice to get out there on the bike. And I usually try to go for a couple rides a week, whether that be like 30K, something like that. Just go for a cruise around the seawall a few times. And yeah, it's just part of just trying to stay active and trying to stay busy and, fill the day too. So it's a good way to stay active.
Lance, does it feel like when you're doing all this sort of summer regimen that, is it a chore? Is it a joy? You know why you're doing it. So what are the emotions as you're going through it?
I actually really enjoy it. I think it's nice to see the gains that you can make throughout the summer. You feel great most of the time, so that's good. This is a time of the year when the body is usually not taking a pounding every day, so it's nice to, if you have some problems going on, you can fix those and you feel good. So it's nice to feel good in your body again, and I think it's something that I enjoy, and if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be doing it.
Okay, so you get to training camp, whether it's last year in Germany or I know you played in Sweden for a couple of years before that. You get to training camp. What are some of the things the team does to prepare for the season?
Yeah, training camps, it's different every year. It's different because coaches are different every year, new teammates every year. But the biggest thing is just knowing your system and what's expected from you in every situation on the ice. So it's a lot of learning to start, a lot of video, a lot of on ice, trying to build chemistry with your lineups or with your teammates and new players. But yeah, it's just a lot of just getting to know the new system and the new players that you're going to be playing with throughout the season and building a foundation for the season that you have coming up.
How long are training camps usually?
In Europe, they're a lot longer than North America. So we come over beginning of August, and we do training camp for about a month and a half, and then the season starts.
Wow. And once a day, two times a day?
Every day it's Monday to Friday typically for training camp here as well. You'll practice every day. Usually have one game per week, whether that be an exhibition game or kind of a scrimmage thing, something like that. And then you'll be working out every day also in the summer too. So the summer it's kind of, the training camp's kind of a grind, but it also is setting you up for the season because like I said, you're building that foundation for when the hard work starts.
And I imagine it's like most things in life. If you engage in some of these practices, yeah, there are days where it feels like a chore, but when the season starts, you're fit, the team's on the same page, there's a freedom that comes, right? In the sense of,
Yeah.
this is why we've done it, to be
Yeah,
able to play at this level. So
for sure. And you know what you're doing all the time, and that's that you take comfort in that, and you're also doing it with a group of guys that you're going to be competing with every night. So you're all in it together, and it's kind of fun to have a group to train with. I really enjoy that. That's the best part of it, and getting to know the new guys and things like that is huge.
thank you for doing this. We look forward to having you around our dinner table in a month or so.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm looking forward
Good.
to it. No problem. Yeah.
Okay, best of luck in the rest of the season, Lance. See you soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay. Lance asked me to apologize to you that he used to play for the Calgary Flames. We're going to press pause on the sermon just for a minute. Tim, how fast can you shift over to... this is amazing. Tim showed me this. We got this going this week. Tim got this going this week. And it's on the Imagine Edmonds website. And Tim, tell us, loud voice from the back, this is live now? This is what's happening here?
Live from what I'm calling the crow's nest, Dave's apartment. I've got a camera that's looking down on our property, and I'm just so excited to be able to watch the development as it goes along and to see the building be taken away and to see whatever new is coming to take shape as well.
I figured I was going to have to drive into Edmonds every single day to see what's going on. Now I can just go on my computer in the morning. This is great. Oh, to pray. Yeah, I got to go every day to pray. That's right. Thanks for the reminder. Tim, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah, two things. We can snoop. We can look at what's going on in the property. The other part of it, too, is that I'm hoping we can use it as a little bit of a storytelling tool for all of the stakeholders and all the people who are rooting us on with the project. So I'm hoping that at the end of this, we'll have a time lapse of what was and what is and what is to come.
Thanks for doing this. This is so cool. Just a little contribution that in the end will just be so fun to watch. That whole thing compressed. So thank you for doing that. And while I'm paused on the sermon, this is as good as time as any. Thank you so much, you guys, for praying on Friday. Friday was a meeting with the province where, if you remember, they had changed the goal on us. They had changed the goalposts.
What's your impossible?
They had changed the goalposts on us. Originally, there was going to be the tower and all the mortgages there, and then we were going to have the rest unencumbered. But if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, they came and they said, that's not going to work. We're going to have the whole thing under the mortgage. And of course, what that means, perhaps nothing if we do well, but if for any reason whatsoever the tower goes under, something happens to the tower, there's an earthquake, there's, something happens to construction, to concrete things, prices go way up. Anything at all could happen, even beyond our control. We lose the church as well as the tower. And so obviously there was upset, and there was concern, and there was lots of discussion. The guy that we were negotiating with, I met him in January, and his comment to me was, I was in your backyard when I was 10 years old on a swing set. And I looked at him and I went, what? He said, yeah, my mom used to bring me over to your house a number of times, and I would go out in the back while she had a Bible study in your house and be on a swing set. And I looked at him, I said, who's your mom? Sandra Forsyth, who was one of the first members of our church. Okay, you can't write this stuff. Like, God orchestrated this unbelievable... So we had this meeting on Friday, and I tell you, we were praying, and we were a little nervous, right? Like, where's this going to land? Not only did they say to us we can have all of the church part unencumbered, but even some of the rest of it is only going to be encumbered for the first 10 years. We were expecting 35 years. This was more than all we could dream or imagine. God was good. in the midst of that meeting Friday. Thank you for praying. Okay, unpress pause on the sermon. We're back into Isaiah 58. Practices are good. They're hard, but they're good. The only problem is that sometimes we reduce them to becoming rules. And what Isaiah is trying to do is reorient the Jews and us around what practices are really meant for. You see, when we come to verse 3, we see that the Israelites are off track. It's not only worship on Sunday that they have messed up, Saturday for them, but they saw practices as rules, as a means to an end. And so they say in verse 3, we heard it a few minutes ago, why do we fast? And you, God, don't pay any attention to us. What's the point of doing this? Stop for a minute, think. Think about the question that they're asking and what's behind it. What does it reveal about their understanding of who God is? It's manipulation. Right? God, why don't you respond the way we want you to? Why don't you bend your will to ours? That's what's in the question. If we fast, if we do this, why don't you do that? It's transactional. That's not what practices are about. They're relational. And not only does it say something about God and their attitude towards God, it says something about their attitude towards themselves. What does it say about them when they would ask such a question? And then we see in verse 3, it goes on and it says, and they do as they please. They exploit their workers. Well, it says that practice has become a means, arrogance, independence, everything done in their own strength. We can do it, but also a means to an end. It's for their own pleasure, their own benefit. You see that? Why don't you respond the way we want you to? Well, why are they fasting in the first place? Somehow to get God's will changed to theirs? Somehow to please themselves? Well, we see at the end of verse 3 and into verse 4, we see it clearly, not only their attitude towards God or to themselves, but towards others. They exploit others. They're doing these practices at the expense of other people. And even though they're engaged in these spiritual practices, which are supposedly supposed to show how spiritual they are, well, how does the day end up? With quarreling and strife. Why? Well, I see. You've only done a 2-day fast. Well, okay, well, keep trying. I've done a 5-day fast, you know. I mean, that's what they're doing in the midst of this. They're trying to outdo each other, and they're quarreling and fighting, even to the point of violence. Come on, you say that's not true. You ever seen a fight in a church business meeting? Oh, they exist. I remember when our family lived in Lake Forest. My dad was the pastor. I think I was the college pastor. I remember a church business meeting when somebody behind me was so angry at my dad. I turned around. I'm sure I said something very polite, very kind, very generous, very full of grace. And he says, all right. And he stands up and he puts up his fist. He says, let's go right now. And I looked at him and I just thought, oh, see, it happens. And it was happening right here in Isaiah 58. So we get into the end of verse 4. Into verse 5. Let me read it out of the NIV, which most of us have. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Why would I listen to you, God says? When you're fasting for your own ends so you can benefit yourself, when you're trying to coerce me to do what you want, why am I going to listen to you? Then verse 5, is this the kind of fast I've chosen, only a day for people to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed, lying in sackcloth and ashes? It's a rhetorical question, isn't it? That's not what I'm looking for, he says. A certain world leader, which will go nameless, has said, I'm more humble than you would think. To which C.S. Lewis has said, if you think you're not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed. We don't engage in practices for manipulation or for religious mourning or to say this is a day acceptable to the Lord and on the other days I'll do my own thing. Well, what about today with our practices? Okay, here's a tough one. I have had numbers of people come to me and say, yeah. These practices, we live in the New Testament era under grace, not under law. I'm very sad for people who think that practices are opposed to grace. Not true. Grace is God at work in us to accomplish that which we could not do on our own. It is God's grace through practices that help us to live the way He wants. So when people talk to me or to one another about spiritual practices being restricting, they restrict our freedom. Or they're just a bunch of rules. They should pay attention because they've missed the point. For if you see spiritual practices as rules, it's not a warning to the church. It's a warning to you. It's a warning to you that you are trapped inside what Isaiah is saying to the Jews. You've seen it the wrong way. And instead of it being rules, there needs to be in you a reorientation of your life and your heart towards the Lord and His people. See, we fast and we engage in practices not to bend God's will to ours, but rather to surrender ours to Him. We'll come to verse 6, and at the beginning of verse 6, you see the change, right? The metanoia. Remember that word from last week? 180-degree turn. Repentance. And God says it to us right at the beginning of verse 6. He says it to the Jews and to us. Is this not the kind of fasting I have chosen? Again, a rhetorical question, pointing the way to what's to come right after it. To loose the chains of injustice, to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke. Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not turn away from your own flesh and blood. Just look at verse 6 for a minute. Just the question at the beginning of verse 6 completely flips upside down or changes or reverses everything that happened in verse 3. Our attitude towards God changes. Instead of it being transactional, it becomes relational. We want Him, not what He gives us. It's completely a verse of surrender and obedience, not manipulation. God, it's not what I want, it's what you want, and therefore I obey you, I surrender to your will. It's about trust, not independence, trusting in God's agency, not our own. The question itself reverses everything in verse 3. But then he goes on further in verse 6 and he says, it's not just about your attitude towards God being changed. No, practices are supposed to help your attitude towards others being changed. And in verse 6, he talks at sort of a 30,000-foot level about systems. There's a picture of an ox and a yoke there you can see. Isaiah is using the picture because everybody would know, they would have this in their minds. And so when he says to loose the chains of injustice, the chains that go from the yoke back to who is ever guiding the oxen are loosed. Then secondly, untie the cords of the yoke. The yoke is untied from around the oxen's head. To set the oppressed free, now they're set free and allowed to leave. And then the yoke is taken and broken. There's the picture that Isaiah is giving. And he's saying, what he's saying about their culture is, there are systems in your culture where there's injustice. And I'm crying out to you to learn to live in such a way that your practices shape you to be oriented around becoming a people who work with God to get rid of unjust systems. What does that mean? What does that look like? We can all think of systems around us that are of oppression or injustice. It's really hard for me when I get in these conversations because I'm a 60-year-old Caucasian male. And according to our culture, I'm privileged. And sometimes that's hard to hear. That part's hard to hear, right? And so whether we see it in our hiring principles across our land, or we see it in some of our welfare principles. I listened to my friend Wayne Stapleton, who's preached here a number of times for us. You remember? Wayne is a black man. And Wayne has lived in Detroit for a long, long time. And he, in our team for the NAB that Deb and I are on, that's what his job is, to try to help the rest of us to pay attention to the injustices that are happening in culture and how we can be a part of seeing them change. And Wayne tells me over and over and over again the injustices south of the border, like when his 13-year-old son was waiting for his mom to pick him up after school, and the police come and arrest his son. For what? Because he was black. And he was standing on a street corner. He must have been up to no good. It's not just the States where we see it in Canada. We see it in our welfare system, both ends of the spectrum. We probably know people. We see them in the pantry. We see them in various ministries that we do out of the building at GNF now. People who are struggling to make ends meet. And I know there's lots of reasons why people struggle financially. But our welfare system just seems like it's all over the map. And it's not just that end of the spectrum, it's the other end of the spectrum. All I need to do is talk to my daughter, Christy, who works in the birthing unit over at Surrey Hospital, to hear the stories of those who come to this country to have their kids, even though they don't live here, so that they can become Canadian citizens and get on the welfare system. Or so that they can leave the hospital. They don't have a car seat, but they know full well that the car seat's going to be given to them because it's cheaper to buy them a car seat than it is to have them stay in the hospital another night. It's broken on both ends. Okay, so why am I talking to you about this? Because this is what Isaiah is saying to the Jews, and he's saying to us, the church. Join with Jesus in redeeming all of the broken systems. I don't care if you go to church on Sunday, he says. I don't care if you fast for 2 days, 5 days, or 40 days. Not the point. The point, instead, is to pay attention to the injustices that are happening all around, because Christ came for that. Here's another one. We have a system of rights, don't we? Someone's harmed me. I have the right to demand justice. Jesus says, turn the other cheek. Well, come with me to verse 7. We're almost done. Verse 7 gets even more difficult because he says, instead of just the systems that are up here at 30,000 feet, now bring it down to the ground and make it practical. What's your attitude towards others? What are the specifics? Right on the ground. Share your food with the hungry. I guarantee that if you were to ask us before our gathering today, why do we fast? We are going to give answers like, well, food has become too important in my life and I need to put Jesus first. I need to understand what it feels like to be hungry so I can have greater compassion for those that are hungry. And Isaiah, speaking for God, says, what a load of crap. He says, do you want to know actually why you should fast? Instead of seeing fasting as I'm going to lower myself to those that don't have food for a day, for 2 days, for 5 days, whatever, however many days. He says, why don't you flip that on its head? Why don't you turn that around? Instead of you fasting, why don't you share your food with those that don't have any? It's a different kind of fast. Instead of you going for a walk to raise money for coldest night of the year and for the homeless, why don't you open up your door and invite one of them to stay at your house for a few weeks till they can get back on their feet? Oh, that's a little crazy. You're asking too much. Why don't you, instead of having 42 different shirts in your closet, go home and practice this? Take 25 of them out and give them away to people that don't have shirts. That's what he's saying. He's flipping everything upside down on its head. He's not saying practices are bad. He just says sometimes we get so stuck on the why being rules. We do this, check. We do this, check. We do this, check. And Lord, didn't you see I did 5 practices last week? Aren't you going to bless me this weekend? No. No, go share some of your food with people that are hungry. Go invite somebody to come into your house. Go get rid of half your clothes. You don't ever use them anyways. Now, what do we do with this? Stop doing coldest night of the year? No, never. Never should we stop that. It's just not enough. It's just not the right thing. It's just not impressive to God. Let's stop doing the pantry. No, let's not stop doing the pantry. But let's go beyond this. Joyce Reese, a friend of mine, once said in a conference, she said, do you know most of the homeless crisis in downtown East Side, you know what it is? The problem is with our foster program. The problem is, if every Christian family would have a kid that's in the foster care system in their home, do you know what that would do to all the homeless issues in Vancouver? Because most of the people living on the street come out of the foster care system. This is hard. Fasting's easy. Or what about housing? Well, come on, Cam. We're doing some good things with housing. I mean, look, we're building a 50-story tower. What more do we want? It's a start. The next thing is we have to find a way that we can raise some money so that it's actually affordable for people, not just those that have good jobs. And then beyond that, I was talking to a pastor this week who said our church is in trouble because all of our young people are having to move way out. They can't afford to be here. Well, what about us? How do we help our young people get into housing over the next 10, 15 years? What's that look like? Well, maybe it looks like, I think I got the details right. I'm sorry to embarrass you, Carla. But maybe it looks like Carla and Kyson and Kaylee and what they did, and moving in together and finding a way to make it happen. Or maybe it looks like a whole bunch of us that are at the other end of mortgages that start to create a pot, a fund, where we can use it as a co-op here within the church, where people that need help to get into housing can get into housing. That's kind of an interesting idea. And that's what Isaiah is pushing at here. It's good to fast. But don't think you've impressed God by doing it. But we pray. Yeah, we do pray. But way too often I pray that God would give me what I want. No, the practice of prayer is so different. Lord, mold me to obey what you want. We fast, we give up a meal or social media. We do this discipline so God will listen to our prayer. No, fasting's to share our food with the hungry. Notice where God's present with them. But we read the Bible every day. Come on. Yeah, so you can live a good Christian life, right? No, so we can hear God speak and we can obey what He's told us to do. But I give 10%. That's a good practice, right? Isn't God pleased with me? Doesn't He bless me when I do that? I check the box. Now we have to give 100% back to Him so that we're not enslaved by money. Silence, not an endurance test to prove how holy we are. It's a practice of not having to have the last word. Solitude, again, not an endurance test. A practice to rid our world of the extra noise and stuff so that we can hear God. Loving our neighbor, they're not projects. When we start to learn to love people that are unlovable, that we don't even feel like loving, guess what that does to us? We begin to have God's heart for people. Love one another. Not warm feelings. No. All out deep commitment to one another so we bear witness to who God is. Well, next week we pick up in verse 8 because God turns it around again. And He says, there's the reversal of your attitude towards me and to yourself and to others. But now listen to the reversal of my attitude towards you and what will happen. Let me pray. Lord, when we reduce practices to rules, would you reorient us? Would you reorient us towards how we see you, how we see ourselves, and how we see others? Lord, in your mercy,